Ladies and gentlemen, bid you all a very fond welcome back to another Piranha Bytes progress report, this time for the 10th of June, 2015. And I never ended up doing one for the month of May. I thought it was going to end up being kind of like a monthly thing I did, but I didn't do one for May just because there really wasn't a whole lot to reveal or cover during that time period. This time around, all I'm really doing is covering some of the answers that Jenny of Piranha Bytes has provided in the Bug Me thread on the World of Risen forums. And unlike the previous videos I did, where I made the mistake of basically there would be one post from Jenny or perhaps from another Piranha Bytes user on the World of Risen forums, who, like, they would make one post that really intrigued me and compelled me to make a video, and I made the mistake of not really going back and discussing any of the posts that they had made prior to that, but since the release of the last video. So in this video, what I've decided to do is I'm going all the way back and covering all the posts that Jenny of Piranha Bytes has made since the last video I did. And so we're going to start with her post from May the 5th. She still affirmed that they want to restrict climbing in this game, but are confident that they can implement the system in a way that still gives us enough to explore, but those assurances have really left me cold in the last two games, and I still see no reason why the climbing system in Risen 1 was considered unacceptable. It was fine. We did not find any way to break the game just by, climbing onto surfaces that they did not really intend us to reach. There's nothing wrong with it, so I don't really know why they still insist that they have to restrict us in such a way. Jenny has stated that the new game coming to latest consoles is not confirmed, but I see no reason why this really wouldn't be the case. After all, Risen 3, the Enhanced Edition, which I neglected to cover back when it was announced, which, by the way, is coming out for PS4 on sometime in August. So, the Risen 3 Enhanced Edition is coming out for the PS4, and we know that the team has been working with the Xbox One and PS4 dev kits for months now, so there's really no reason to think that these games won't be making the next-gen consoles, especially if Deep Silver is still their publisher, and we all know that Deep Silver would not really benefit from being a PC-only kind of publisher. So it should go without saying that this game is probably going to come to current consoles. She confirmed nothing on the subject of range combat in this post, but a bit more was revealed kind of recently, and I'll touch on that when I get to the post for that date. She seems to say that the team begins a new project by creating a concept that they are all on board with, and then go back and review any critic and player criticisms and comments on their previous games to find a way to try and implement everyone's ideas and wishes into the game that they themselves really want to make. And I'm on board with this kind of ideal. I don't like the idea of everyone kind of pressing a developer to make, quote, our game, as I consider video games a respectable medium for artistic creation, and to that end, Piranha Bytes really should only make games that they themselves enjoy making. They should never sell out to what we tell them to do. So I am totally on board with the idea that, they make the game they want to make first, and then try to find a way to make it work for everyone. I just don't want them sort of restricting their artistic integrity, though. But this does beg the question, how often are features we ask for and don't see omitted due to their design vision, and how often are they omitted due to the technical or design limitations? Like, how often is it just a case that Piranha Bytes engine can't support this idea, which is something they need to get straight, because the Genome engine simply is not working for them, and it's a shame to see that they are still kind of forcing themselves to endure the limitations and restrictions of the Genome engine currently, unless they've given it an appreciable update, which I am not inclined to believe that they have. On May the 12th, Jenny answered that Piranha Bytes does not seem to be aware of how well Risen has sold, which is not well at all, by the way. We have since learned that globally it seems to have sold less than 100,000 units on Steam, at least. And it's interesting that they don't seem that this doesn't really seem to matter to them. But at the end of the day, I suspect that they are paid, just a solid commission for delivering their game, and no extra royalties based on how the game sells. At any rate, I think they should keep the game's financial success in mind, because this could greatly impact the budget for their future titles if their publisher doesn't have confidence in the profitability, of their product. There will be no first-person mode likely to be implemented in this game, which is fine by me, because a lot of people seem to think that a first-person mode in RPGs are more immersive, but as far as I'm concerned, Piranha Bytes games have dealt with the immersion factor by having more interesting characters, stories, dialogues, and settings than your typical open-world RPG these days, such as Skyrim. All that really matters to me are the camera controls. If they're going to go with a third-person perspective, the camera has to work. An apparently half-sincere comment in regards to a contract with CD Projekt, but of course that's really a pipe dream, and such a business deal can't really be anticipated by any party, so that was more of a kind of side remark from one of the users on World of Risen's on World of Risen, basically saying that Piranha Bytes should not persist in their contract with Deep Silver, which, fair enough. She seemed confused by a question in regards to the, quote, handcrafted nature of their worlds. She insisted that the games are essentially fully handcrafted, but this is kind of a fickle question based on how one defines the term handcrafted. Risen 2 and 3 most likely used a technology called a height map, which is created by a terrain editor, which effectively allows a developer to rapidly produce terrain foundations such as changes in elevation, ergo mountains, cliffs, hills, ridges, that kind of thing. And this one technique might be single-handedly to blame for the overall less inspired design of the worlds of Risen 2 and 3, which were notably bumpy, tunnel-focused, very shallow, and just not as open and free to exploration, and does not really feel as inspired as the fully deliberate handcrafted design of the early Gothic games, for example. It stands to reason that they'll continue using this technique after spending the last 5 to 6 years developing with it, and it just concerns me that we won't see the more focused and inspired design of the Gothic games in the first Risen, which is a real shame. She states that the dungeons present in their new title won't be as large as the ones in the final chapter of the first Risen, and this could be a blessing or a curse. In my opinion, the dungeons of the first Risen were some of the best designed dungeons in any RPG of this kind. They show the same focus, inspiration, and attention to detail that the surface world received, and I always found it just more exciting, more enjoyable, more compelling to explore. Everything was deliberate, it was focused, it was just really... I'm rambling here. But without a handful of these kinds of dungeons, and the exploration of the new game might feel less satisfying, but I also feel that it is better to have smaller, less inspired dungeons than a bunch of large, utterly boring Oblivion-style dungeons, so I can't really feel too bitter about it, because really it goes with the same arguments against the design of Risen 2 and 3 on the surface. I really am not convinced that they would make any very interesting dungeons if they continue to work with that kind of mindset in regards to the world design. However, the final level of Risen 3 did have a fairly interesting dungeon. This sort of kind of like a prison-like maze in this. It was the closest to a real dungeon that we've gotten in the last 2 Risen games, so it was fairly interesting. And but if that's the most we can expect out of this new game, then I don't think any of the dungeon crawling part of it is really going to be all that exciting. On May the 18th, Jenny did not confirm anything on how many endings the game would have, but her comment did suggest that there would only be one. Risen 3 and Gothic 3 were the only games that they developed to have multiple endings, although Risen 3's endings only varied in the final cutscene and the implications thereafter. She also stated that many quests will have multiple solutions, and, quote from her, "You just have to live with the consequences." Hey, Jenny, just so you know, we like that idea. And we wish you didn't use it like it was a threat. Just let us climb, explore the world however we want, and we'll, quote, live with the consequences. Let us kill non-essential NPCs and live with the consequences. At the end of the day, it's our choice how we play, and you don't somehow make the game more fun by deliberately restricting what we do. Give us more danger and more consequences. We will appreciate it. Trust me. Day and night cycle and dynamic weather, because of course that's going to be in the game. This has existed since Gothic 1 and in many RPGs since. But there is no info on if the systems will be more varied or impactful on the gameplay than before. On May the 22nd, Jenny stated that the development team uses a variety of PC builds to try and be sure that the game will be supported by the most possible systems, so everything from AMD to NVIDIA. They just want to make sure that you aren't going to run into a problem, such as we had with Risen 3, where on launch the game would not run with certain processors that had multiple cores, for example. She stated they're working on a new combat system, meaning that they won't just copy and paste Risen 3's, as they have been mostly wrongfully accused of doing with Risen 2 to Risen 3, but there's no real details yet on how this new system will function. Could not comment on the budget, but claimed that the world would be, quote, huge. Hopefully meaning that there will be more explorable land, larger individual locations, that kind of thing. And, well, yeah. There's going to be a focus on role-playing elements, because they have no interest in trying to create, for example, complex economic systems and other logistical simulations, which is fair enough. Some RPGs in the past have created interesting economic systems, such as Fable and Mount and Blade, but Gothic and Risen never really needed it. I do like the idea that merchants might offer, or might place different values on different items based on what their sort of merchant inventory is like, and the player can choose if they want to buy or sell something now, or wait to find a merchant who might offer a better deal. But at the end of the day, it's really not necessary. On May the 26th, Jenny vainfully teased us about how the world and settlements would be designed. And I can't really say I've derived anything out of these comments that make me any more confident. All I really want, and most users on World of Risen seem to want, are a few sizable towns or fortresses with a host of active NPCs who make the place feel lived in, like Corinna's from Gothic 2 had. A lot of NPCs doing jobs, going about their day, talking with each other, and it just felt like it was a lived-in city. It's not like the towns and strongholds in Risen 2 and 3, where just like everyone was just kind of moping about, and there weren't really it didn't feel like there were enough people to really sustain a settlement like that. And that's all we really want. We just want the world to be believable and filled with people who make it seem like it matters. She stated that they would not add complex cinematic animations for conversations, just sticking with a system that they've had since Gothic, which is fine by me, because I still find it a lot more satisfying than Skyrim's static cameras or Fallout 3's pause everything conversations. She seemed confused in answering a question in regards to large bodies of water in their settings, such as lakes, rivers, and oceans. Their games never really had huge bodies of water acting as obstacles or locations to explore. Gothic and Gothic 2 had oceans that would kill you if you went too far. And Risen 3, after finally bringing back swimming, let you cross the occasional river or lake and swim out to some of the offshore islands, but again would just teleport you back to shore if you went too far. On May the 29th, Jenny stated that the current team of Piranha Bytes has 26 members, 2 level and art design trainees, and 1 member living and working in Thailand to assist in outsourcing smaller tasks such as object design and animations. Most of the team members are responsible for several tasks, both out of necessity and to try and have a lot of creative overlap in the design aspects. So there's just a bit of insight on the actual size and focus of Piranha Bytes. They're not that big, and they're really competing in a market that kind of overshadows them on a regular basis. So it's hard to really kind of break through in the kind of market that so many of their publishers have been trying to trying to really get them a break into. So, when you consider that teams like Bethesda have hundreds of people working on the project, and Piranha Bytes is trying to make a game just as impactful with 26 people, I don't know. They need to kind of narrow their focus a bit, and I think they'll really be able to, find their niche again, which they have long since lost. On June the 9th, Jenny answered that she does not seem concerned about having a problem with their publisher, who at this point we can still only assume is Deep Silver based on how she's answered any question in regards to a publisher in the past. At least this means we shouldn't have to worry that Deep Silver will hang Piranha Bytes out to dry and put them at risk of bankruptcy. Piranha Bytes will surely stick to a contract with them as long as possible, just to keep the studio's wheels turning, keep the lights on, keep everyone employed. I asked a question in regards to the size of the world in this new project and the vertical exploration of it, such as mountains and cliffs and so on, and how much we might expect to explore them. She answered that there would be different kinds of locations and altitude differences. However, she stated that it will be, quote, a different kind of map than before. This answer makes me very intrigued. Could it be that the setting will be something totally different? Something removed from the medieval or pirate settings altogether? At any rate, it almost seems to imply that there will be different biomes a la Gothic 3, but it's really hard to make anything convincing out of her comments. I asked also about the functional differences between weapons. So weapons that actually have different animations, different attacks, and just actual variety to how these weapons are used in combat instead of just different damage values and resistance types. She stated that there would be such differences, but the weapon design is not finished yet, and saying anything in that regard would probably reveal more about their setting than they're really ready to announce just yet. I mostly asked this because many people complained about how Risen 2 and 3 only had one-handed weapons, and that the only real differences was that one did slashing damage, another did piercing damage, and so on and so forth. The only case in which these values mattered really was how resistant an enemy was to one damage type over another. User Xenon is Bad on World of Risen actually gave me data showing that there were small differences in the weapons classes in Risen 3, namely in the range of damage that they could put out, depending on the amount of charge you put behind the attack. For example, piercing weapons did not gain a substantial bonus from fully charged attacks, but generally had a higher minimum damage than slashing weapons did. And it's a step forward, but it's really not a big enough variety to keep me interested, because at the end of the day I used all the weapons with the exact same technique, so it really made no difference in how I played, and I just used whatever weapon just had the most damage, straight up. It really didn't matter otherwise. Jenny stated that there would be a larger variety of ranged weapons in the game than previously, and that they will all be, quote, different than Risen 2 and 3. What this might say, or at least how I'm kind of reading it, is that above all there will not be guns. There will not be muskets and shotguns and that kind of thing. Risen 2 only used guns and throwing spears as a ranged attack, and Risen 3 only had guns as an aimed weapon. Both games, of course, had short-ranged attacks that you could use in melee combat, but the real common ground between the games were the muskets and the shotguns. So what can we expect? This makes me less convinced than before that this game will in fact be a Risen 4 or anything of that sort. If guns are not present anymore, at most we might expect a Risen prequel, which makes very little sense given that Risen is a spiritual successor to Gothic, and ergo the backstory is almost the same. Could we be looking at a whole new IP entirely, and what might we expect out of it? Perhaps something not even in the medieval or pirate theme at all. Could we be looking at something altogether much further in the future, or just something completely original, something that no one's ever really done before? Who knows? Only time will tell. The hero of their new game is supposed to have a bigger background story. Now, this is a huge change from all of our previous games, if it's as deep as the comment implies. In Gothic 1 through 3, we had the nameless hero, who we knew nothing about prior to him arriving in the, mining colony of Corinus. And everything about him was defined by us as a player, how we played the game, and how we went about saving the world. So everything about his character was pretty much what they were saying about us as a player. And Risen was pretty much the same way. All we knew about the original nameless hero was that he fled an island called Goris as a stowaway on an Inquisition ship, and from the moment he washed up on the shore of Farenga, everything was in our hands from that point. We were the nameless hero, and the nameless hero had no story before us. And Risen 3, of course, gave us the nameless Steelbeard, which is how I call him now. The only real character with a measure of backstory, but one that was never really elaborated. He was the son of Gregorius Steelbeard, a sibling, or likely a half-sibling, to Patty, and he rose to fame as a pirate captain after the events of Risen 2, and from that point on, everything about his character was, of course, defined by us as a player. So, if this new game gives us a character with a lengthy backstory, then this will be the first time we have a game from Piranha Bytes that starts us off with more than just a nameless hero with which to project ourselves into as a player. So it's hard to really say if this excites me or terrifies me, because when Piranha Bytes tries new things, it's often kind of a sort of lukewarm reception. She stated that the game will have a somewhat more serious tone, and in fact elaborated more that the game will be darker than previously. And it's also supposed to have fewer gimmicky minigames. Now, she pointed out the lockpicking minigame, which I can't really tell if she stated that, if she was implying that lockpicking will remain in the game, or is one of the minigames that will actually be removed. It's likely that it'll still be in the game, but just the way she phrased it made it a little hard to be sure of. She affirmed that there is an increased emphasis on allowing and encouraging the player to explore, such as being able to see landmarks from further away, which is likely accomplished by using improved render distance, better landscape design to allow you to actually see distant landmarks from any location in the game. And there's also supposed to be more background to the world and more possibility to use items in the course of exploring, which makes me very interested. On a fundamental level, exploring in video games just requires you to run around and pay attention, and of course interact with objects to loot them. And having more interaction with the world to open more exploration could be really cool, depending on how they do it. Perhaps more puzzles akin to Risen's dungeons, allowing you to open up secret areas, get around traps or obstacles. You know, I'm down with that kind of thing. I would like to see more actual interactivity with the environment that allows you to explore it more. So that leaves me a little more excited. On June 10th, Jenny stated that they will not be present at E3, which is hardly surprising, because to try and make a presence at E3 would likely not do them any credit and just cost them a lot of money that, you know, they just kind of throw to the wind, as they would be overshadowed by the bigger titles and publishers who are already making a presence there and that everyone's excited for, such as Fallout 4 and the rumored Dark Souls 3. So, Jenny again states that the game is going to be darker than previously, not really making it clear if they're intending a darker, more bleak atmosphere than Risen 3 in particular, or if they are intending perhaps their most grim and miserable setting to date, which I'd be okay with, to be honest. There was, a dark, foreboding and bleak element to, I'd say, Gothic 2 above all. Risen had it as well, to a great extent. The first Gothic kind of did, at least in the later chapters. And I wouldn't say Gothic 3 ever really had it, and certainly Risen 2 and 3 did not have enough to do it credit. So if this is by far their most serious and bleak setting to date, it could be really cool if they make it convincing. She made an oddly teasing remark stating that we should decide for ourselves when we play the game if the locations are big enough for us. I'm not really sure if this is kind of like a hint, a tease about the fact that this game is going to have their biggest land masses to date. But the language that she uses just kind of makes it hard to really deduce anything. It's really hard to squeeze out an answer from anyone at Piranha Bytes in regard to their the size of their land design, as they often seem to insist that having a large landmass broken up and separated by loading screens is the same as having fewer but larger locations, which, by the way, it really isn't. It's not the same. Having a bunch of small locations that add up to a bigger picture is not the same as having 2 or 3 big locations that you can really sink your teeth into all at once. And I really hope they figure that out by now. Alright, so I apologize if I could have stumbled over a lot of that. It's hard for me to really do this kind of thing, and I do my best, and I hope you appreciate it, but that's the extent of the answers thus far by this date, the 10th of June. But most encouraging of all is that Jenny entreats us to ask some of the same questions again, quote, in a few weeks. This suggests to me that the reveal is due sometime soon, perhaps even before Gamescom in August. But it is definitely going to happen before the end of the summer, so she implies. If you all want to get in on some of this before the official reveal, you can ask whatever questions your hearts desire on the World of Risen thread linked below. I hope to see you all there. I hope you all have some more interesting comments to add to the pot, sweeten our excitement a little bit more. And either way, next time we get a big, healthy chunk of news, I'll be sure to be there as quick as I can to update you all. I hope you all enjoyed the video. Like and subscribe if you're new. And we'll see you all when we got something more to bite into. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.